All right, so Alex, first thing up on the weekly Muse, I guess this is.
Sure, we can figure that out at the end of the segment.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. Just assume that there's a few things that we talk about on episodes, and they're categorized in some way that we will figure out at a later date. On this particular segment, though, there's a new version of Myst that recently came out in August, and it is referred to by Cyan as a reimagining of the original game. For those of you who are not familiar with the original version of Myst, it was a very classic, famous video game that was about puzzles on this island, and it was more of a point-and-click adventure title, and what they've essentially done is gone back, changed all the graphical elements around, so it's been completely updated and allowed you to free roam around the map. Alex, you played a little bit of Myst when it came out, right?
I played the original Myst, and I also do have the real Myst that came out for, I think, for the 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
Which I think now they're on 25, which is why they did this reimagining.
Yeah, sounds
But yeah, I played the original point-and-click version of Myst. And that was way fun back in 1998.
Yeah, it sure was. I think my parents got it for me, and we were playing it. We were playing it back on like the old Apple, that were the big gray boxes, if you remember those. And I remember just like Mom and I were thinking to ourselves like it would be really cool to play together and try and do all of that stuff. And we had to get the hint book because it was like I don't even know where to start with this thing.
Yeah, I like that the manual for Myst, which kind of told you about it. It didn't tell you how to play the game at all, except that there's like if you really need a hint, there's one on the back, and it was just this really vague hint. Yeah. And it was like, yeah, check this. That's all we're gonna tell you.
Right. And it was before the time where like the internet was as big as it was today, so it's not like you could just go online and find a bunch of hint books unless they were like in a GeoCities page or something.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
So you were kind of left to your own devices, and I think we figured out a few different things, but I was just kind of totally lost by the whole prospect of it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested, though, to play the new version, because I think one of the big things I had a problem with was those static frames that they did in the whole framing device of doing that point-and-click adventure felt very limiting to me, being able to figure out how to interact with the environment, and I didn't really feel like engaged with it in that way, and being able to free roam helps with that.
Yeah, that's a factor of the time it was made. 98 wasn't really, or 96 I think maybe even, wasn't really super like, you couldn't roam around in games like that back then.
Yeah.
So much.
No. Oh, 93.
93, sorry. I was like, it's like as old as Half-Life, but I mean,
we're coming up on 30 years.
Oh geez. To create the game they did with the worlds they did, they couldn't have used a 3D game engine.
No.
With the technology back then.
No.
It would have been terrible.
Right.
The game would have taken up 16 discs.
Yeah. I think as it stood, there was at least 2.
Probably.
And when they came out with Riven just a little ways after that, which was the sequel, I know that there was at least 2 discs, and I think there were more than that. Very ambitious. But yeah, no, all the games at that time, a lot of them were in static frame, and a lot of them were point and clicks, the like Legend of Monkey Island and all of those. And yeah, a lot of it was technical limitations. They just couldn't do full rendered 3D environments.
Right.
And that made me start thinking about, though, we've seen a few, well, we've actually seen a lot, we'll talk about that in a minute, different franchises that have been updated and brought into the modern day, and I was just kind of wondering why you think that has suddenly seen such a resurgence, because we're getting a lot of them.
Well, I think a lot of the reason for that actually comes from a lot of these older games from the early 2000s and the late 90s, and apparently early 90s in the case of Myst. The technical limitations of those times and the technical abilities now are so different that people can take games like Myst, or it's just a point and click with a great story that you could piece together and a great just way to tell that story. You can take that and then go, hey, we've taken and redone this entire game from the ground up in the case of this new reimagined version of Myst with technology that we never could have done it with in the beginning.
Sure.
It's like you can have full 3D and VR supported games now, where before it was like point and click. It's like, I think a lot of it is from the nostalgia aspect of people going, yeah, I grew up with these games, and then being like, I can see it remastered into like today's tech.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's great.
Yeah, I know.
I think that's a lot of it. Is that nostalgia? Like even with remastering movies and stuff, and just coming up with new versions of older like movies and stuff as well. Everything's kind of going through a phase of like, you know, we're in our 30s now, you and I. So that stuff is all from our childhood at this point, and it's like, companies are like, you know, it'd be great taking the things from your childhood and making it so it's accessible for you now.
Yeah. Exactly.
And we're like, yes.
Yeah. I kept thinking about this, like, it feels like our generation are like cultural curators. We've like saw all of like the cultural milestones of the past, and so we're curating and updating all of it in the modern day with what we have now. But that can occasionally work to its benefit, sometimes against it. The cynical part of me says that we're seeing so many of them because people have run out of ideas, and so.
I mean, that's also a thing. Although I will give games like Myst a pass.
Yeah.
For this, because Cyan, it's still making games.
Yes.
They haven't run out of ideas. They're still making really crazy and expansive worlds. I have Abduction that I got on Epic when it was free, and I haven't played much, but it is a successor to the Myst franchise in the way that it is still an exploration mystery type game. Figure out what's going on, figure out how to do everything. It doesn't really tell you a lot. So eventually I might get into that to play it more.
Sure.
But, you know, they're still making games 30 years later. So, like, an anniversary edition of game that's like 25, 30 years old, I would give it a pass for coming up with being a new remastered or reimagined version of it.
Oh yeah, no, I can understand that. Especially the other thing too is being able to see the technology, even if they haven't done a necessarily remaster, but I've noticed that it's kind of nice to be able to go back and play a game that came out 20 years ago and play it on modern hardware, because the difference in being able to do your frame rate and your load times and everything is just like night and day. When I started doing streaming, I went back and I played Deus Ex. And I realized that we've gone so far, because it came out in 2000.
Yeah.
And we have gone so far that if you play the basic game Deus Ex, it does not run properly on modern hardware.
No, a lot of games don't run properly from that age.
No, like it is near unplayable because you run so fast, you can't stop. You can't even get the button pressing down because it's running at like 300 frames or something a sec. And there was so many times I just tried the training just to see how it was. The lighting was terrible, and also like the places where people were supposed to talk just like cut off 1 second afterward. You couldn't defuse bombs because like a half a second after you got up to the bomb, it exploded in your face.
Yeah, because a lot of that was because the frame rates back then, for instance, were very limiting to the gameplay. So when suddenly you're like, yeah, max frame rate, 400 FPS, it's like, oh, well, if we count things that happen in frames, then suddenly it's like, you've got a second, deal with it.
Right, exactly. So what they actually had to do with that particular game is they actually made a whole community actually made a different mod that was the revision mod. And it allowed you to play it correctly on modern hardware and adapted it with a lot of other things that you can add in later. So we got to a point where I used to use it to determine how good my hardware was by how long the load screens were, to the point where, oh my god, it runs so fast, I have to actually get a mod so that it doesn't like absolutely become unplayable. So it's kind of amazing in that respect too. But I should actually probably do Myst on stream. We'll have to think about doing that.
It may be from before this came out.
Now I have to figure. Now I have to. Man, time is
Dates
weird.
are weird.
Time is a flat circle, folks. It's you might be hearing this from the past or the future.